chance of an effective forecast risk communication?
Thanks, Simone. All right, well, I want to go to Tiernan's talk. Unfortunately, I think it's at the same time as mine. I also think that maybe one risk is when you have shaky hands and you talk with your hands, trying to hold a microphone, so I'll do the best that I can. So I'm Julie Demuth. I'm a researcher here at NCAR, and I'm really thrilled to be part of this Understanding Risk session for the next couple of days. I think there's a lot of stuff we need to wrap our minds around as we think about what understanding risk means. One of which is, what is risk communication? What do you think of when you hear this phrase? Because we're flooded with a lot of different risk communication images in any given day. Some of them are ridiculous, telling people that they should be aware that they shouldn't hold the wrong end of a chainsaw, or that the coffee that you're about to drink is very hot. We know these things, right? Some things are less effective, like the Homeland Security system. Other risk communication messages are really important, like to be aware of drugs, or with new edibles. I love this phrase, start low, go slow. Or to remind us that maybe we shouldn't text and drive. Well, what about weather forecasts? They're also a form of risk communication. We might not necessarily think about them in that way because they're very prevalent, we're very familiar with them, but they're a way that we communicate the possibility of an event that might cause harm to people. Not all of them are that good. These are some of my favorite bad forecasts, risk communication messages. The one on the lower right is my favorite. I call it clown hair. Or this one communicates different watch warnings and advisories that are in effect for an area. Kind of looks like a Picasso piece of art or an inkblot test. But forecasts are an important way that we do communicate the spatial components of risk or the temporal components of risk. We can communicate it deterministically or probabilistically. And even though these forecasts are for good weather, sometimes it's for high impact weather, like Shadrach talked about. We had our first big snow event in the high country yesterday. It was kind of exciting, but it also comes with a risk. And as we saw yesterday, different people actually were driving on I-70, going up into the mountains, maybe to sort of celebrate this first snow event. But there were all sorts of crashes. And for a period of time, I-70 was actually closed. Now, another type of weather hazard that we're all too familiar with here in Colorado is flooding and flash flooding. And this is actually the focus of the session that I'm going to moderate tomorrow. And flash flooding is particularly hazardous because it's very spatially localized. And it has this temporal component. It's a very short fused rapid onset event when there's been so much precipitation that it kind of overwhelms a basin. How do we communicate those aspects of those types of hazards to different people? We're getting a lot better at it. We have a lot of data, we have a lot of forecast products, but there's still a lot that we're trying to learn. So just to bring this back around, like I said, weather forecasts are a form of risk communication. It's how we make people aware of a risk and give them a sense to start thinking about how to prepare for and respond to it. And those people are really heterogeneous. It can include, thank you, Jennifer, for having my chart there. It could be your local emergency manager. It could be other rescue personnel. It could be our media, our broadcast meteorologist, who is a recipient of that information, who then also provides it to other people. Or it can be any one of us as we're driving home. But how we think about improving these weather forecasts or these forms of risk communication requires us sometimes to take a step back and think about what goes into that information. What is it that we understand about the state of the science? Or in this case, about the atmospheric science and the operational environment. What do we know about how well we can observe the rainfall that influences flash flooding? Or about those flash flood processes and how well we can actually predict them? So this is going to be the focus of the session that I'm moderating tomorrow, which I've titled A 50% Chance of an Effective Forecast, which I thought was rather clever. And so what we're really going to investigate in this session is what is it that we do and don't understand about weather risk, with the focus, like I said, on flash floods. And what about the risks that it poses. And we're going to have three different people who are going to be involved in this. First of all is Russ Schumacher. He's an assistant professor up at CSU. And Russ is somebody who's on the cutting edge of really trying to understand precipitation systems, understanding those ingredients and the processes that cause flash flooding. We're also going to have Kelly Mahoney, who is a research scientist here at the Earth Systems Research Lab and with Ceres. And Kelly also studies precipitation systems, but she puts it in the context of climatology and in a future changing climate. And another important component of what Kelly does is she doesn't just look at the precip, but also what happens when it hits the ground. And then finally, we have Dan Neatfelt, who is the Science and Operations Officer, like the Chief Scientist with the National Weather Service office in Omaha. And Daniel's really the boots on the ground guy. He's the guy who takes all that knowledge, all that research from people like Kelly and Russ, and when he's sitting in that hot seat at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to understand that flash flood risk and how to get that information out there to people, that whole process that he goes through. So that's going to be the session that we're going to have tomorrow. Join us, I hope you will, at 11 o'clock, unless you go to Tiernan's session, which also sounds great. So thank you very much.